the Force be with you.
I knew it wouldn't be at all.
Well done. All right. Well, welcome to the Merle and Locke podcast. I'm Merle.
And I am Locke.
And we have a special guest who is...
Jane Doe.
We're back with another May 4th Star Wars special.
Where we know nothing and say a bunch of things.
Hey. I feel like this is my area to shine. I've watched those movies to the ground.
Well, last Star Wars special, we started off, I feel like, pretty general, talking about like our favorite characters and what have you, and things we loved about the Star Wars universe. But we fell into more of Anakin's lore.
Yeah, that's me. You're welcome. Not sorry.
So Jane Doe brought up the point that since we focused a lot on Anakin last episode, we should, delve more into his boy and talk more about Luke. And we all, of course, thought that's an awesome idea. We should definitely delve into Luke's lore a little bit, what we know and love about him, what we not so much love about Luke.
Who better to start off with the OG hero that we know in the Star Wars universe?
Yeah, the guy we grew up with, right?
But to be fair, his dad wasn't a hero.
Yeah.
His dad, arguable. That
No.
His dad was kind of a hero.
At best, he was an anti-hero.
But anyway, this isn't about Anakin.
Defining terms.
Okay, so naturally we start off with the fact that, Obi-Wan brought Luke to Tatooine so that he could be raised, in safer conditions and out of reach of Anakin and the Empire, yeah?
That just occurs to me. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the similarities between this and various other forms of media that share similar plot lines. And I am not going to name them because I don't want to talk about them.
Okay.
We specifically mentioned Harry Potter has a
we did, yes,
relatively
yes.
similar plot line. A lot of them, they are specifically shipped off to live with their aunt and uncle.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's pretty common, isn't it?
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they're related changes up, but it's never like a family friend, grandparents. It's always the aunt and uncle.
Well, I mean, that's true with every, superhero story, right? Where they usually don't have parents. They're either shot in an alley somewhere or...
Yeah.
Not to name anybody specific, and... I don't know, whatever happened to Peter Parker's original parents, they ended up spending it with his aunt and uncle as well, so...
Actually, I think the only example of that he doesn't end up with his aunt and uncle is Batman, Bruce Wayne, being raised by his butler.
Oh, that's true.
But just from the perspective of Luke's story being a hero's journey, that is the aunt and uncle raising our hero is something we see a lot in media, kind of across the board. That's a fairly common setup to keep it on track.
Okay, yeah, and we and we start off on Tatooine with seeing this boy, right, where we're we get the general idea of Luke and where he stands at this point in time, which I know George Lucas, he made the. He really delved into the colors of the setting and what have you, where, in A New Hope, Luke is, he's very naive and unaware of the world at large and what's going on out there. And he's grown up pretty sheltered and what have you. And he's wearing all white, which, is something I didn't even take notice to, until I started doing more deep dives onto George Lucas and what he was trying to portray there. And then you see in, the second movie, The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke is wearing, a grayish jumpsuit throughout it as he's more exposed to, the Empire's rule and, all the devastation that they've been causing. And then, in the last movie, The Return of the Jedi, he's wearing all black. And going back to New Hope, where he's grown up with this naivety. This is where I feel people, have this general dislike of Luke, where they're like, oh, he's kind of annoying, because he is just a kid.
Yeah, I mean, the same was said about Anakin too.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
So,
Very true.
I mean, that I feel just kind of turns into the whole Skywalker thing. Like, he's kind of whiny, he complains a lot. Like, I wanted to go to Toshi's station to get a power converter. Like, it's that whole whiny thing.
Yeah.
But you actually kind of love him, though. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very lovable guy. And then we have old Ben, showing up, that troublesome old Ben, filling old Luke's head with all these stories and what have you, and which is something that we were planning to get into. Jane Doe, you brought this up. How?
Yeah, I was just going to revisit the color thing quick before we moved on too quick. If you've ever noticed the way that George Lucas is a master at this. I will give him that. The division between the light side and the dark side. The light side is almost exclusively your angelic colors, with the exception coming later due to editing issues in the introduction of the green lightsaber. And then Mace Windu's lightsaber is another exception to the rule. Although not if we get into the whole Mace Windu's a gray Jedi thing, which we're not doing. But it fits better if he is a gray Jedi. But if you look at truly, like, especially in the original trilogy, the color schemes are very light side is your whites and your light blues. It's almost angelic. And your dark side is a lot of reds and blacks. And then this is not the original trilogy, but when you look at Darth Maul, who even looks demonic, like that line is extremely strong. Even the transitions in A New Hope, the first movie, between all the light around Luke, and then every scene with Darth Vader is dark backgrounds. He's all in black. His lightsaber's red, very metallic, very cold. Luke starts on a desert planet, warm, hot, like just that like light,
organic colors, yeah,
light and warmth
absolutely.
And brightness, and then you go into like deep space with Darth Vader, so you get a lot of that cold, metallic, distant feeling.
Yeah, very contrasting colors,
right?
Just black and white, and
just the way it sets up that we're swinging from the good side to the bad side is insane. Like, very clear.
It's pretty great, isn't it?
It's masterful. Just like from a storytelling perspective of like, there's no questions about what we're looking at.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I do love and appreciate, all the efforts that George Lucas went through to use colors to tell us a story as well. It's just really good direction. But what I thought we could get into was, as far as when Luke started talking to old Ben Kenobi, it was, well, this is where, we start seeing, a little deeper into, Kenobi's personality, where, like we've been, subjected to it, over the years since then, but right then we had no idea, like how much he is known to not exactly lie, but withhold information in a clever way,
or twist the story a certain way.
Yeah, where he tells it from like, a certain perspective that isn't revealing enough, or it's only revealing enough to, give the point across that he wants you to receive.
Mm-hmm.
He's very clever. A very clever guy, that old Ben Kenobi.
I do think it's set up to be this antithesis to what we can assume they receive in Empire propaganda. So, as far as everything Luke would have been told his whole life, Ben's telling him straight up lies. Because that's certainly not the story the Empire's telling. In the light of, like, he's never received a version of the story that had both perspectives in it, and most people don't. I mean, even in real life, they talk about history books being written by the winners, So, on one side, he's being fed the Empire is great propaganda. And then you have Ben Kenobi telling him that the Empire has done terrible, terrible things and not always for the greater good like they say they're doing. So it's just these two very biased perspectives on the same events, that if he would have been mature enough to put them together, maybe he could have created an actual semblance of what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of like growing up in a small town, and you got your local crazy dude that's telling you conspiracy theories, that goes against everything you know. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about that line from Has Been Hotel. There's a character called Sir Pentious. He looks like a snake. He has these little egg minions, and they say that someone's able to kill these angels that they're trying to protect themselves against. And another character says to Sir Pentious, "You didn't tell us that you had this information." And he goes, "What? They say crazy shit all the time." And then one of the eggs goes, "Bank accounts are a scam created by the shadow government." And Sir Pentious goes, "See?" And it's just like Luke saying, "What? He says crazy shit all the time." Ben's going, "I used to be a Jedi employed by the Jedi Council." And Luke's like, "See?"
I fought in the Clone Wars.
Everybody's like, "Yeah, okay, Ben." Why don't you go back to your little hut in the middle of nowhere?
You got in your hand on some of those space rocks, didn't you?
Is there a space version of skooma? That's what it is.
What, isn't that death sticks? Or is
Death Sticks.
Or is that their equivalent of cigarettes?
Cigarettes aren't the vibe we're going for. We're going for like the hard stuff that makes it say.
There was a name for it, exactly. I forget what it was. But one thing about us saying about old Ben kind of lying to Luke, is it really lying, or is he also kind of lying to himself after all those years of trying to come to terms with the things that had happened? And when he says, your father was in the Clone Wars, but he's dead now. It's more old Ben kind of rehashing things and going, no, Anakin's dead to me. Like, he's no longer there.
Well, I think it was, a manipulation tactic, because Ben Kenobi,
it's that old Jedi propaganda.
Well, no, he needed Luke to, because Luke was, supposedly supposed to be the new chosen one or whatever, that would bring balance to the Force and everything. And the key to that was confronting Darth Vader. And, he couldn't say, "You know what, Darth Vader, he's your daddy, but, you need to train as a Jedi, and you need to go take him out. I know that's a lot to take in, but I'm sure you got this," I think it was just easier, to paint Darth Vader as a villain that murdered his father.
Well, and in all fairness, at least originally, not so much in the current Star Wars era, but originally there could have been some question as to how much Obi-Wan knew about the identity of Darth Vader. At least I don't know how far ahead George Lucas had planned everything, and I don't know if he'd ever tell anyone how far ahead he'd planned everything. But
and I do remember interviews that were talked about, and like how the story had changed a little bit. Whether it was input from the actors who were like, "I don't really see my character going through that," or like they couldn't get behind the idea. He even had some backlash on people who were actually liking liking it, that they were afraid certain characters would turn into something, so he changed, like, so when you said about Luke turning kind of dark in clothes, and, like, his general character going from, like, white to dark, is that, from what I understand, is he was going to turn to the dark side?
Well, he definitely was, on that line there, especially towards the last movie, and like
Right.
when he went to Jabba's palace and what have you, and
Mhm.
how like ruthless he was being,
Right.
where like you actually get the idea, you're like, oh geez.
But it's at least at the time that the movie was originally written, we could question whether or not Obi-Wan knew that Anakin was still alive at all. So the question of him lying to Luke does depend a little bit on what you believe. And like I said, that changes a little bit in the modern era where we have further information that would imply that he did know Anakin was still alive. But at the time, we wouldn't have known that, So there could be an argument made from the perspective of the writing of the movies that Obi-Wan didn't know in the original movie that Anakin was alive.
That is true too. I mean, if you think about the last time that Obi-Wan would have seen Anakin, he was just like, he's practically dying. Like, I left him for dead after everything was all said and done. So with the resurgence of the Empire and seeing this hulking behemoth of a mechanical man standing beside the Emperor, you're like, that man kind of seems familiar, and he can sense it and sense that it feels like Anakin, but that wasn't him. But he's just like, no, he's dead.
So I mean, I get your guys' argument and you defending old Ben, but I mean, everything's been snuffed out by now. He's a liar.
Well,
or a non-truther.
In all fairness, I am an old Ben hater from day one. Not knowing that Anakin was alive does not stop him from being a manipulator with how he handled Luke. It just throws your father's dead into question. Him not lying one time would not forgive him for all the other lies that he absolutely told to get Luke to do what he wanted Luke to do.
Yeah, well, he was sitting in a position where he's like, I trained and threw one guy at the Emperor to see if he could do it, but he buggered it all up. So maybe I'll just take your boy and I'll try again.
Well, and not to be discounted is the possibility that he looked at this as an opportunity because Palpatine didn't know about Luke. What was the thing that buggered him up last time? Palpatine's influence. Palpatine had a direct line to Anakin. And Anakin listened to Palpatine over Obi-Wan. So here he has a kid that's got to be somewhat talented in the Force. I mean, look at who his dad was. And Palpatine has no knowledge of him. So maybe if Obi-Wan does it the same way, but without Palpatine, he can achieve the ends he wanted to achieve the first time. Again, does not excuse the actual manipulation that took place, but thought process, right?
Old Ben, it could be argued, he didn't have too much of a choice considering that Luke had hopped away for, the day, came back, and his aunt and uncle are turned to skeletons in the front lawn of their hut.
You could have cleaned that up.
All because of the Empire.
Well, all that potentially did was accelerate his timeline. We have to assume that he would have pushed Luke in the direction he pushed him in no matter what, just based on the stories he was telling him.
He hopped on the opportunity. Yeah.
Right. Well, he said to himself, oh crap, I'm losing my chance to have a secret weapon. Soon he's just going to be a weapon, I've lost the element of surprise here, so whatever I had in mind, we have to do now instead of 3 years down the line like I thought it would do.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to Luke's interactions with Vader, now we know. I don't know if it's in quote unquote legends or what have you.
Oh, like the extended universe stuff that's may or may not be canon anymore.
Not entirely certain.
It's not Disney canon, but it's canon to somebody.
So there was that whole thing where, after the was it called the Battle of Yavin?
Yeah.
Where they destroyed the Death Star and what have you. There was that point in time where Luke, Han, Leia, and Chewie, along with their robot friends, they all went to a weapons factory, right? Where they were infiltrating it, and I don't know if they were trying to dismantle it or what have you, but they stole an emissary ship and disguised themselves as the emissary and infiltrated this weapons factory. Just and they came across all these prisoners and stuff, and they tried to free them. And Darth Vader showed up, because there was somebody supposed to be showing up to, handle the trade deal and what have you. And it turned out to be Vader. And that, to my knowledge, is the first time Luke came face to face with Vader, because everything, of course, went to shit because Chewie tried to shoot Vader. Because Leia was like, kill that motherfucker, over the radio. And,
she said exactly that, huh?
Are we talking face to face, spoke to each other? Because he absolutely saw what Vader did to Obi-Wan.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, where, he saw him before, but he didn't, have a
actual interaction with him, right?
Yeah, a little father-son chit-chat,
Well, is it a father-son chit-chat?
Well, unknowingly, I suppose.
I do think it's also worth noting at this point, since we're into adventures, just the amount of information, actual information about what was going on that was given to Leia that was not given to Luke at all.
Right.
I mean, there's the argument that she was also propagandized. Well, she was propagandized in the same way that Luke was propagandized. That was equal, because she was Rebel Princess Leia captured on this ship and everything when we first meet her. But the amount of knowledge that she had about what the world's been like since Obi-Wan and Anakin fought each other the last time versus Luke living in absolute obscurity on Tatooine, knowing nothing. So then you have Leia, just like you said, her reaction to Vader is just kill him immediately. And Luke has this farm boy, we can't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
There's no negotiations to be had here. She's like, do you know who Darth Vader is? And he's like, no, I don't know who Darth Vader is.
Well, the thing was, during that whole exchange, it was Han was like, Chewie, lay low, don't bring any attention, just chill. And then, it was Leia. She was like, don't kill that motherfucker.
Shoot him in the face.
And, Chewie being the simp that he is, he's like, okay. And took some shots, and Vader's like, and bling blow, can't hit me.
He's like, guys, I'm literally covered head to toe in armor. What are you doing?
Yeah. But I don't even think he blocked with his sabers. I think he used his force powers to take 2 stormtroopers and just hold them as a shield. And all the shots just went into them.
That's on brand. That's on brand.
Yeah.
They can't hit anything, so they're just meat shields at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But then Darth Vader came in contact with Luke, and Luke had his late lightsaber out, which was Anakin's lightsaber. And, Vader's just looking at this guy like who the hell? Who is this guy? And he's blocking his, his lightsaber, and he's toying with him at this point, insulting him constantly. And he took the lightsaber, and he was going to cut down Luke, but then he last second he realized, he's like, wait a minute, I know this lightsaber. And he's like, this lightsaber belonged to ellipsis. And then AT-AT, foot stomps down because Han and Leia somehow got an AT-AT at some point and hijacked it. And just started stomping all over the building. And, all hell broke loose. And, that would bring me into another topic where Luke keeps losing his fucking lightsaber. Like, how many times?
Sounds familiar. I know a certain somebody who also had issues keeping their lightsaber.
That's true. It runs in the family.
It's a Skywalker thing.
Never mind that Luke, his training was short, it was informal, and Obi-Wan did not have the time to impress upon him the importance of keeping his lightsaber as close to him as possible. But if we remember, that was impressed upon Anakin. Like, you're not supposed to be losing this thing.
Imagine the thoughts that go on through old Ben. In his head, he's thinking about it, and he's like, you're just like your dad, and that scares me.
Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say, is like, we're going to talk about Darth Vader recognizing his lightsaber. How about his face on another body?
He hasn't seen his face in how long, though?
That's true. He hasn't looked at. He forgot how he looked.
He doesn't have hair anymore.
The flip side of that is, do you think he for a second forgot what Padme looks like?
Well, the stories are he had reoccurring visions of her, as well as some other mentors here and there. Now, this is some of the extended books and whatnot, so
now he's looking at two children that are a mixture of his features and Padme's features, and he does not, like, it's the lightsaber that clues him in. It's not looking at these faces and going, why do I know these people?
I would argue it's because of the building the lightsaber process and how it's kind of a bond between you and your lightsaber. He built his specifically battle ready for the times of the Clone Wars, and that's why it was the shape that it was.
I'm just saying, as a man who the worst day of your life was your mentor almost killed you, your wife died, giving birth to twins, and now there are two kids standing in front of you that, holy crap, kind of look like your dead wife.
There's that thing, is that he did feel that he knew Leia was his, but he didn't know he had a boy.
That's true. I mean, that's
there was that
fair
whole
argument.
thing where he kept trying to kidnap her, and I mean, he does technically know the family that he was put with, or she was put with, sorry, because that's a familiar family that he spent a lot of time with politics with Padme. He was kind of their secret agent and whatnot, helping them out. He should know them. That's my point.
Yes, well, perhaps we forego the plot holes. So in that conflict that I was speaking to earlier, I mean, that is, I think it's one of the first times where, Darth Vader realizes the potential of this young wannabe Jedi dude. Yeah, because he sees the Force is, mediocre with this one. And he's like, well, because he realized at that point, he was like, this has Ben Kenobi written all over it, And he's like, well, Kenobi, you're a dead man, so this boy is mine. I'm gonna get him. So at this point, he started pursuing this youngster, because of his prowess in battle, or his luck. There was a lot of luck involved during that conflict, I feel.
Pursued in a non-creepy way, in a fatherly way.
Right.
Man, it's just, gonna check out his Facebook pictures and whatnot, see where he's been, what he's been up to, just get a bead on this guy.
He's gonna hire the cops to arrest him like a good dad does when their kid's acting out.
Right.
Yeah. Now, one thing I also wanted to talk about when it came to Luke was, I would like to go into the whole lightsaber thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where, like, he did, like, you brought up the good point where, like, yeah, he wasn't bonded properly with the lightsaber, which he was informed about later on, where, he gets his hand cut off by Vader, and he loses that lightsaber. And then he meets up with this, like, I guess the Force gave him visions or whatnot of this Jedi on a particular planet. I don't remember the planet name, but it led him to this planet where
the Dagobah system. Is that
no? It was some random outpost on a random planet. Can't remember the name. I can't remember any time it's ever been used in lore, but he went to this planet following this vision that was given to him by the Force, where he ran into a person who wasn't necessarily a Jedi. Her name was Verla, where she trapped Luke and because she had traps set up in her home and whatnot, because this was a pretty savvy lady, but she trapped Luke and, told him why she's not a Jedi necessarily, and why she's been in hiding, which after Order 66 passed, she was meant to be training as a Jedi, but she ran and she wanted nothing to do with the Force after that. So she escaped the Inquisitors and Vader and what have you, and she abandoned all of her teachings, and she wanted nothing to do with the Force. It was at this point Luke was having some issues with inner turmoil of finding out that Vader was his father, and he felt like he was out of touch with the Force for the most part. And the only way to get back into it, he thought maybe he needed to train with a lightsaber, and feel his way back in and find a sense of balance again. So he asked Verla, he was like, "Do you have a saber that I could have? Because, surely you won't have any need for it now that you've abandoned the Jedi ways." And she revealed to him that there's an outpost on Tempest from the High Republic era,
right,
where he could probably find a lightsaber. So he pursued this lead, where he went to this, I guess it was more of a temple, but he went there and he found this yellow lightsaber, where he was confronted by a ghost of the Grand Inquisitor.
Right.
Which, like, again, I don't know if this is canon lore. Because, fighting ghosts and whatnot, ghost inquisitors, I don't know if it would be something that was particularly taken into lore. But it's just something I know. This is what I believe, okay?
Well, they did stuff like that in Rebels anyway, but that's...
Oh, okay. All right. I've never seen Rebels, so right. I don't know about that one. But yeah, so he used his yellow lightsaber and he defeated the Grand Inquisitor ghosts. So now he had a new lightsaber in which to train with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. He started, getting a beat on things and getting back into, using the Force, and everything was going well until he lost his lightsaber again. Yeah? Where did he went into like this, oh gosh, I think it was like a comic book or something where this happened, where he went to a realm, right? Where it called No Space. And during a fight, his robot hand, and which was holding his lightsaber, was crushed, in the grip of this giant robot thing. And it didn't shatter the kyber crystal, but it cracked it.
Right.
So that it wasn't working right. And it was at this point, after losing that, like him and R2 tried to fix it, but it was still, wasn't functioning right. And so he had to, he started looking into it, right? Just started, delving into the ancient Jedi texts. And trying to figure out, how the hell do I get a lightsaber? He started reading into it more and saying that Jedi, they would make their lightsabers. and what have you, and they would get their kyber crystals from Ilum.
Ilum was one of the main planets that they would go to, yeah.
Right, but it was occupied by the Empire, so he couldn't go there. So he's like, next best thing. I don't know if he like heard through rumor or what it was, but they said that you could go to Christophsis and perhaps get a kyber crystal off the black market or something. And so he went there, and he went to like a local dive and started asking around a bit. Then out of nowhere, as someone said, because he was trying to be, subtle about it, where he's like, oh, I'm looking to buy rare gems. And they're like, oh, what kind of gems? And he's like, the rarest kind. Like, kyber crystals. Okay. And it was at this point, this chick came in, guns blazing, just killed everybody in the bar. Right? And Luke's like, naturally, he's like, yo, what the fuck? And and she was like, I just saved you. And, through conversation, she says something like, this planet doesn't actually make profits from the black market, selling kyber crystals and what have you. It's that they stay here, and when people come here asking for kyber crystals, then they capture that person and they turn them over to the Empire,
right,
and collect the reward.
Right.
And this chick's name was Greta, and she revealed that she was Falanasi, or like she came, like I guess her family was Falanasi or whatever, which are like force sensitive people, and she still, she believed in the Jedi and make them making a return and making things right in the galaxy, and she wanted to support him, and she already knew who he was. She already knew who Luke was, and she was saying that like when he took out the Death Star or whatnot, he kind of avenged her family, which had been killed by the Empire, and she wanted to repay him. So she said, I'm going to help you find a kyber crystal. I know a guy. It was a guy named Quada. So she took him to Quada and told him that he was looking for a kyber crystal. He's a Jedi. Is he
related to Watto?
Watto? No, different species.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, he was like, Quada was like, yeah, I'll help you if you do something for me in return. Which he's like, here, take this kyber crystal, which it was a red kyber crystal, and he said, I want you to see if you can fix it, right? And Luke didn't know what he was talking about, naturally, because Luke doesn't know anything. He's trying to figure stuff out, but he doesn't know all the ways of the Jedi and the Force users and what have you. And Greta had to tell him, like, yeah, what the Falanasi used to do as a favor to the Jedi after the defeating the Sith. What the Falanasi would take the red kyber crystals and they would kind of like purify them.
Mm-hmm. Unbleed the kyber crystal.
Exactly. And so Luke gave it an attempt, buggered it up, couldn't do it. And, Greta was like, hey, he tried, give him a kyber crystal. And so he did. He gave him a clear kyber crystal, and Luke used it. He meditated upon it, and he was greeted with a vision of Yoda. And he started, going off on Yoda. He's like, what happened? Like, all this crap I've been through, I've been like in my mind asking you for help, but you never answered. And Yoda's, speaks in his riddles, and he's like,
naturally,
yeah, where he's like, if you actually needed me, then I would have answered or whatever. And Luke's like, yeah, screw you creepy looking fuck. And then he dipped, and he got his green kyber crystal, right?
It's like, it reminds me of those drunk history lessons. You ever see those on TV?
I'm giving you a quick rundown. But I know it's been going on for I feel like I've been talking for 20 minutes already, telling the story about him losing
No, I like
his
you
lightsabers.
ad-libbing different things that they would say, which isn't natural to what the characters would say. But I just imagine that's what they'd say.
Oh, man.
Listen here, you froggy little shit.
Oh, man. But yeah, that's how he got his green lightsaber, which I think that's how he got it, because there was another story about him, visiting old Ben's old quarters out in Tatooine, and he found a journal which told him how to create a lightsaber, but he couldn't get kyber crystals, so he synthetically made one, and it turned green or something. I mean, but I feel like the former was a cooler story.
Wouldn't it be funny if we find out that he's just been making up bullshit for the last 10 minutes?
Yeah. I've been making up stories here.
He's been old Benning us this whole time.
Oh, no.
Now, the only other time I could think about him losing his lightsaber, which I don't know if did he actually lose it? During that final battle with Vader and Palpatine, when he tossed it? Did he toss it into the hole? I can't remember.
When his hand was chopped off? Is that what you're saying?
Well, when he chopped off Vader's hand and Palpatine's like, strike him down, become my apprentice. And he's like, fuck you, dude. And he threw his lightsaber down.
You know what? I
can't remember.
I thought he just kind of put his guard down. I don't remember him actually throwing his lightsaber.
No, he actually did throw it down. I don't know if he just threw it on the ground or if he threw it like in a hole, because it was this whole big thing, with the nerds online, and they're like, "Why would you drop your lightsaber, you dork? You should have kept it in your hands and fought the Emperor and what have you."
You use the Force, you get your lightsaber again. That's.
I do want to note for the record that we are also the nerds online, and that should not be discounted.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I do want to get into when you guys think, as considering all that you remember and all you love about the story of those of Luke's adventures. When do you think he actually became a Jedi?
I think there is a very real argument where he was never a Jedi and did not become one at any point. And I say that only because becoming a Jedi was rooted in a lot of tradition that was lost when the Jedi were wiped out. And that was not followed through by Obi-Wan or Yoda. They were unable to because of having to deal with the actual war that was going on. So I think the argument could be made that in the traditional sense of a Jedi, Luke never became one. He certainly didn't live up to the standards that they were asking Anakin to live up to make him a master Jedi. He had a lot of emotional struggles that we know based on later movies that were made. The Jedi of old would have basically laughed him out of the council for.
I mean, yeah, they wouldn't have trained him at 19 years old, just as they didn't even want to train Anakin at, age 9.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think, for me anyway, I think the reality is that Luke never became a Jedi in the sense of the Jedi that Obi-Wan would have been referencing. Did he create his own type of Jedi that then potentially moves forward depending on which future you ascribe to? Yeah, that's possible, but I don't think he became a traditional Jedi.
I feel. All right, let's get your opinion, Locke. What do you feel about it?
Well, I also have strong feelings about not feeling that he's tied to being a natural Jedi as the Republic would have viewed him at the time of their peak. He definitely saw the flaw in the original Republic Jedis, their rule. He did not fully abide by them. If you follow him and his journey, and even the story that I like is when he gets married and has kids with was it Moira?
Myra?
Myra?
Oh, gosh. Is it Myra? 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 Oh,
Moira, Myra? Start.
I can't remember.
I will do a quick Google. Give
Mara.
me a second.
Is it Mara?
Mara
Jade?
Mara Jade, yeah. That sounds about right.
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway, him getting involved with her, and she was a dark side user, and I feel if you were a full-fledged Jedi, you would not be in a relationship with a dark side user.
You aren't supposed to be in a relationship at all. I mean, I know we saw that rule.
Yeah, that's
I know
the
we
other
saw
thing.
that rule broken several times.
Right. Oh man, it's difficult. Okay, so we have this whole trial of Luke. Like, I mean, him trying to figure stuff out for himself. And he's seeing how dark the universe is, and we slowly see him being corrupted and over time, and it takes you back to the point like where he has that final battle with Vader, right? Where he has that long pause, where he chops off Vader's hand, and he sees like he has he's a robot hand too.
Oh my God, we have so much in common.
And he looks at his own hand, right? Where he has that moment of pause, and it takes you back to, I guess it was in Empire Strikes Back where he did that cave of evil or whatever it was called, where on Dagobah when Yoda was training him,
right,
and he leads him to that tree that's also a cave underneath the tree.
Yeah.
But yeah, he goes in there where he has to face this trial, and he's confronted with a vision of Vader.
Right.
And he cuts Vader down, right?
Yeah.
And then
takes off the masks.
He cuts off Vader's head, and then like the mask does that little explodey thing, and it reveals Luke's face.
Special effects.
Yeah. And he sees his own face in the mask, right? And and then we go back to the fight he was having with Vader, and where he's realizing like that's the point where I feel like he finally realizes like how corrupted he's becoming,
right?
And he's like, shit. Like I did, like maybe he didn't realize before or whatever it may be, or he's like at this point, he realizes that this right here is, it's his main test, right? Where, Palpatine is telling him to cut Vader down, and it takes you back to, when Palpatine told Anakin to cut Dooku down and become his apprentice, Yeah, exactly. And it's like the same setup.
Yeah.
But where, Anakin, he went through with it. Luke just took his saber, and tossed it down. And he's like, no, fuck you, dude. And
dude.
Nah,
he goes,
no,
dude.
He's got the skater boy haircut. He's like, dude. I'm not doing that.
I was thinking he just had General Akbar in his head or whatever. It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah, but he goes through this whole monologue saying that he won't follow the dark side and whatnot, and it was at this point where I think he became a Jedi because Palpatine, he's like, fine, so be it, Jedi, and he actually calls him a Jedi, like right there at that point where I was like, that's it, that's the moment. I was like, that's the moment he became a Jedi.
So because Palpatine declares it, you're like, nah, that's it. He's
that's it. I mean, you think about Palpatine, like if he calls you a Jedi, you're a Jedi,
He could have been using the word Jedi to mean enemy, but I do think this brings up an interesting question that I will pose to the two of you. Was Luke able to fulfill the prophecy that his father could not? Did he bring balance to the Force? Bearing in mind that if you follow the extended universe plotline, where he, in theory, is a representative of the light side, in theory, marries a representative of the dark side, but also, again, in theory, never really adheres to one side or the other and kind of lives out his life as a gray Jedi.
Yeah, I feel like he's way too muddy, to be considered.
Oh, so we don't have a good definition of what balancing. We don't agree on a definition here.
I don't think we agreed on a definition of balance last time when we discussed this.
No, but the way Merle is phrasing this makes me think that he is adhering to the Jedi definition, where I am not.
Oh man, I don't know, because I feel like, the definition of Jedi, it died off. I feel like Luke redefined Jedi.
I'm talking about balance, though. Like, the Jedi definition of balance in the Force was no dark side. Whereas I'm defining balance in the Force as a little bit of both. A little bit of both to keep each other in check, and you live somewhere in the middle, which
Right.
I think Luke achieves that.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. 100%.
So, in theory, we could say that Luke fulfilled the prophecy, whereas his father could not, because his father couldn't toe the line. Now, if you believe the Jedi Council, then absolutely Luke did not, because the argument I would have is he didn't even become a Jedi. Because he couldn't.
He knows nothing of it.
Like, he was doomed from the start, because he could never become a Jedi the way that they want people to become a Jedi.
Exactly. Like that's what I love about Luke is the fact that, it was just his own, like he didn't receive hardly any guidance. He figured it out on his own and, finding that balance.
He received guidance. It wasn't true information.
Well, yeah.
He was lied to a lot.
Yeah, true. Which, he did hold resentment, towards that misinformation. But, of course, Obi-Wan and Yoda ghosts are like, yeah, well, we're dead, so fuck you. So.
Yeah, I remember that line.
Yeah, it sticks well.
I remember Yoda was 2 birds up when he said it. Just flipping everyone off. I'm dead. I can't.
Take this, you will.
So, another question I have. Did Obi-Wan make the same mistakes with Luke that he made with Anakin?
I feel like when it came to Anakin, I feel like Obi-Wan was, of course, completely hands-on the whole time. Constantly making Anakin feel as if his accomplishments were, inferior, not quite up to par, with the ways of the Jedi and whatnot. And with Luke, he gave him a few words, and then he was like, "Good luck, guy. More, experience, make your own mistakes, and see what happens."
Half of the experience is experiencing it for yourself, not just adhering to what one cracked out old man has to tell you. he might have finally realized it, and he goes, "You know what? Live to your own mistakes, kid." I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, man, it's like the old dad, right? When you're a young dad, you hover a lot, and you try to set them on the right path. But if you're like an old dad,
so he was on his 5th kid.
Yeah, he was just like, the kid was 5 years old. He gives him his lunchbox and says, "Go get a job," and kicks him out the door.
It's funny because in a lot of ways I don't feel like Obi-Wan redeemed himself with Luke, but I do kind of feel like Yoda did. Yoda stepped in and gave Luke enough guidance to move forward when he needed it. And what was Yoda's biggest mistake with Anakin?
Stop it. That's all he'd ever say. So it's the same thing that Obi-Wan did.
Not stepping in at all.
Well, yeah, pretty much. It'd be like, "I'm having emotions." Well, don't.
Don't do that.
So, I know it was funny that he was like, "Well, if you would have needed me sooner, I would have been there." But he does show up, which is something he never did for Anakin. Whereas Obi-Wan kind of just flipped to the other extreme. And I think that's very consistent with his character, to be honest. He did his helicopter mom with Anakin. And so with Luke, he was like, "I don't know, latchkey kid, here you go. Here's your key to the house. Here's the street you live on. Go get him, Tiger. Go do what you're going to do, man." there's a happy medium here that you are missing entirely.
I feel the other place that they went right is that they didn't put the prophecy thing in his head versus what they did to Anakin, where they're like, you're the chosen one, and once they realize he can do a lot of things, they're like, oh my god, like how powerful he is, blah blah blah. They didn't put that into Luke's head, which like sets
That's
like
true,
a
too.
certain bar.
I do think that's a little bit twofold, though, right? Because they already thought Anakin was going to fulfill the prophecy. So, on the one hand, Obi-Wan was like, we fucked up the prophecy. There's nothing we can do about that. And then on the other hand, he was like, maybe I can use Luke to get us back where we need to be. Because at the end of the day, I don't think if Obi-Wan were asked, did you use Luke to set the prophecy right? I don't think he'd say yes. Because Luke is not what Obi-Wan would have known to be a Jedi. I know his ghost was happy and everything, but they're dead. They don't have to live with the repercussions of anything that happened. I think they would have just been happy enough that Palpatine was, for all intents and purposes, dead. But, like, Luke was not a Jedi, as they knew Jedi, so I don't think Obi-Wan, had he lived through the whole thing, would have said, oh yeah, I set the prophecy to rights.
Right.
With Luke, which was my intention, because, like, he didn't. Luke was not as emotionless, as out of touch with himself as they would like Jedi to be. He had plenty of feelings. He almost went to the dark side, which they were all talking about kicking Anakin out of the council for. So, yeah, I don't think Obi-Wan would have said, oh yeah, I achieved what I set out to achieve. I think he would have said, Palpatine's dead, and that has to be good enough. Because that is the one big mistake that I can fix, is Palpatine being in control of anything.
Yeah, Luke he wasn't constantly told what was right and wrong. I feel like Anakin was, and I feel like, man, that's just tiring, you know? You know, constantly being told, like, everything that you do, like, every step you take, whether it was right or if it was wrong. You know, Luke didn't have that constant, like, berating.
He went to a non-denominational church.
Oh man, and I just love that, you know, Luke rose to the occasion, you know, without that constant tiring berating of what he was doing was wrong or right, and he just like came to his own conclusions.
He had several lightsabers and a plucky attitude, and he made it work.
He did. Oh man, but bless him. I love Luke.
Bless him.
I love that guy. I thought his, you know, entire character arc was amazing. Especially like this extended universe stuff is just, it's awesome.
I mean, even when you just look at the cycle of his story versus like the cycle of Anakin's story as they happen in the movies without any exterior input, just the fact that he is a classic hero's journey, like hits all the marks, and Anakin is like a classic anti-hero / hero to villain, or just villain origin story. And the fact that they got married together so well, that they do feel so continuous without any exterior input, I think, now obviously we know the reveal at this point, but I think watching the prequels and then watching the original trilogy, like the impact of him being like, I'm your dad, is not lost just because you know that going into it. So just the way that like you watch the hero fall and then the hero rise, like it's just, as a story, it unifies itself really well.
I would recommend watching them like in chronological order. Well,
as they were made,
the Star Wars universe, like time frame,
right?
Right, yeah.
Because episodes 1 through 3, right? You get so invested in it and Anakin's character and what have you, and then you know the movie ends in despair.
Yeah,
right.
Whereas the next 3, you know, it ends with hope. You know, you're hopeful by the end of it, which is, you know, kind of uplifting and nice. I remember watching the first 3, you know, as a kid too, And, watching that happen to Anakin, and it's just like, oh, God.
But
That's so sad.
I'm just saying that George Lucas's writing and the way that he was able to take himself back in time and get himself exactly where he needed to be without it feeling like he forced himself. Like, sometimes if a prequel's written after the fact, it feels like they did a lot of forcing themselves.
Feels, cagey in a way, yeah.
They knew where they had to end up, so of course, like, this one random thing happens just right. Like, that, it doesn't feel like that with Anakin. It feels a lot like Anakin made his choices, and we just are watching it now. Like, they didn't make a movie, they filmed a documentary, and they just put this part out later,
Right.
Yeah.
Like, the choices feel on par for a teenager to young adult who, like, everyone's keeping secrets from him, and he's like, come on, just tell me something. Let me do something. And then his son being like, I have no information, and I am going to run into this head first. And boy, oh boy, I hope I have the talents to accomplish this.
Well, that's imagine, because Luke would just go headlong into it. Originally, if Anakin would have done it, somebody would have said, no, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. That's crazy. That's too bold.
Yeah. What if we compare the two? I feel like most of the time Anakin had this deluded way of thinking where he's like, I'm the chosen one, I can't die, I'm invincible. Right. And then Luke going into it like this whole, farm boy, he's like, every conflict he's been in, he's like, I'm gonna die. But I mean, all in all, I feel like bringing light to everything that Luke was going through and showing like a sense of empathy and analyzing like everything that he was subjected to on this adventure. All these conflicts that he's been through. It gives me personally like a whole new respect for the character. Where, at least initially, especially as a kid, watching the movies, like, yeah, he was the hero, he was great, but I didn't have that deep appreciation that I've developed over time after, like, seeing the extended universe stuff and what have you, and actually getting into it, especially in preparation for this episode today. Like, I did, I wouldn't say like the deepest of dives, but I did a pretty deep, pretty deep dive, trying to figure out some things to talk about and what have you, but I love Luke. I love that character. How do you guys feel?
It is funny to me to watch the same people fuck up two different kids in two different ways. like if we want to talk about excellent metaphors for family, and it's like the oldest and the youngest, they're both fucked up. It's not the same way, but like neither of them came out quite right? Because Anakin, they did too much. And Luke, now granted, and I will give them this one little, like, I see that happened and I acknowledge that it made your job harder. There was an active war going on. They didn't have that with Anakin. Well, they had the Clone Wars, but they didn't have, like, they had more of a village with Anakin, and they did not have that with Luke. It was like 2 of them total, and they had to give him just enough information that he, like, fingers crossed, is not going to die. And the fact that was the more successful approach somehow.
It tells you a lot, doesn't it? Any final thoughts for you, Locke?
I do love the story of Luke. When you do compare the two characters, you get this change their story just a little bit, as far as no aunt and uncle for this one, but you get a loving mother. You don't know your father. Now, let's give you a couple characters to kind of help build you up, give you a nice, I call him a gray Jedi, and then your light Jedi, and you build them up. Well, let's kill one of them off. Now, the other one, gets to see his light side Jedi just say, okay, it's my time, and just turn into clothes and fall to the ground. Traumatizing at first, but then you go, oh, he's still talking to me. Am I going crazy? No, this is what the Force is, my son,
Oh man, imagine if the whole thing was a hallucination.
Oh my God.
They're just both in a nut house somewhere.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you cut back and Luke's writhing around in Tatooine in the desert dune. He's dehydrated or something, and he ate some bad cactus or whatever they have on Tatooine. Yeah, he's just completely drugged out of his mind. Uncle Owen comes walking up. He's like, "Damn it, Luke!"
Luke starts, "You're a skeleton! You're a skeleton!" He's like, "No, I'm not."
Let's face it, he's still mumbling about Toshi Station and power converters and all this.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Merle and Locke podcast. If you enjoyed this banter, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Merle and Locke, or simply follow the link in the description. Thank you.